Welcome to the latest edition of Arrow Insights. My name is Mark O'Leary, and it's my pleasure to introduce one of our advisors, Creston Leggett, who's going to talk today about the importance of intergenerational wealth transfer and the work that we're doing with our families, and particularly around providing advice to them on behalf of children and grandchildren. Creston, welcome. Why is this such an important issue?
I think this topic is very relevant for many of our affluent clients in particular. I think for a long time, much of the conversation that we had with them was centred around their own wealth preservation and funding their lifestyle and retirement as they built their businesses and built their careers and built their, supported their families. But we're finding more and more that the conversations we're having very much centred around this concept of intergenerational succession planning. And
so, Creston, just to sort of interject there, and I hope you don't mind, but just talking about some specific examples of helping the next generation. As you're aware, for a number of years now, we've worked with many families on education funding programs, and it's pretty clear from the work we've done over the last 30 years that for families that sort of plan ahead of what is a substantial cost with an investment strategy that takes advantage of compound growth and tax savings, save a lot of money in funding for what is a substantial cost. And it's a far better strategy that we've discovered over the years than simply funding for school fees out of after-tax salaries. And so that's a working example of what is specifically a great outcome for many families. And we know that the cost of education is not getting any lower. It's a substantial burden now for not only parents but also grandparents. That's an example, I think, that is really worthwhile taking notice of. What are some of the specific reasons that clients are interested in investing for their children or grandchildren, other than, say, for education funding?
I think it's a combination of reasons. I think driven from, the parents or the grandparents of clients, or perhaps even for business owners looking to incentivise or reward their staff, that it all comes back to this concept of value. So they have a value of supporting, one another and providing assistance because they have the means to do so, but they've also got the heart to do so. And I think that's a really important element. And then on the other side of it, you have, a different generation with different needs. I think it's fair to say that it's probably more difficult to, establish, yourself financially in this environment as a person of that younger demographic. So you've also got a need on the other side, as well as, a desire from the grandparents. So it's really around, having a conversation that brings that family planning together and seeing some of those aspirations be spoken about, and then action is taken to see that fulfilled.
So visibility is important, isn't it? It's a little bit like the old days where people used piggy banks to put money aside, and the beneficiaries could see it growing.
Yeah, I think the days of a piggy bank are probably gone. I think most of the giving that we're seeing is probably simply to bank accounts. We set up a bank account on behalf of a new child, but I think the reality is, a savings account is it's simple, but it's not going to provide the long-term benefit that I think a lot of people are sort of wanting to introduce for, their children or grandchildren. So I think a large part of it is, for the parents and the grandparents, they've seen the benefit of financial discipline in their lives.
Yeah.
And they know that starting even with something small can lead to something great in the long term when, they've allocated it for good reason and they're disciplined in how they've done that. So
what are some of the investment options available?
So there's a broad array of options that are available. We spoke about the simple structure of a savings account. You could introduce investments into that mix, whether it's shares that have been held by the parents over a long time, or introducing new shares for children. You've also got structures that are more specific to certain purposes, such as what you indicated earlier, education bonds or investment bonds, where they have a certain tax structure that provides favourable benefits if you commit to a certain time period of investing. You've also got superannuation as a retirement vehicle. Yes, it's a long time away potentially for children or grandchildren, but it's a way to ensure that money is locked and put away for good reason. The other parts to that are also education. So for a lot of families, investing in a private education or in co-curricular activities is really important. Yes, it's not monetary, but it is an investment into the person that they will be and the knowledge and the experiences that they will develop over time. And I suppose finally the last one, which is probably the most common, and you hear it a fair bit in today's media, is the house of mum and dad for home deposits. So entering the property market is another clear outcome of this conversation that we're having.
The investments themselves, there's a wide array, as you've pointed out, clearly have tax considerations.
Yeah, that's
right.
Make
a comment on that?
Yeah, so, and this is one of the biggest elements when you consider or you plan for investing for your children or grandchildren is with two areas. One is tax and the other is control. And from a tax perspective, you have the option to either notionally put this for someone's benefit or you specifically structure it so that it is within their ownership and control. What your question was centered around was what are the tax outcomes? So for minors, there's very little flexibility in terms of how you can receive income or structure an investment that is tax effective because of the tax rates that apply there. So consideration needs to be given around what investment options you use and what strategy you're really looking for. Is it a passive, income that you're looking to support, or is it a capital growth strategy that you're hoping will compound over time? For education bonds or investment bonds, they have their own internal tax structuring. And so there's nuance in how those strategies will play out, very different from what I was talking about with shares or savings accounts. So it's important to really delve into what you're hoping to achieve on behalf of these beneficiaries, and that will guide, in some respect, the elements of tax and then control. So do you want the children to be involved from day one, and they're given some influence as to how that investment, so to speak, plays out, or is it something that you want to give them, in due course at a specified time? So
we've heard a lot about insurance bonds, investment bonds, education bonds, if you like, but it's not all about them, is it? There are other options, as you've touched on.
Yeah, I think it's very important to recognise that each family circumstance and position is different, and the why that supports the decision making is probably the most important element of it. And for us, as advisors to our clients, we've got the privilege of helping facilitate those conversations and opening a dialogue for clients to talk about the values that they have, and then for us to support the decision making that comes around that is something that we really enjoy, because there's a lot of options that are available, but most importantly, it's how can we see our clients' objectives and aspirations be fulfilled by these sorts of topics.
Yeah. So before we close off, what has been your experience thus far? In client conversations, and including not only the primary client necessarily, but also the next generation. Have you noticed too much of a difference, or any differences at all, between their values and their aspirations?
Yeah, I think there is a disparity in terms of need, as I indicated earlier. The needs of the affluent are very different from perhaps their children. And so this concept of planning succession or planning wealth transfer for certain reasons has been really important. For me, in conversations with clients, I suppose I've had the privilege of working with that next generation on their own family planning, and it all starts with this foundational piece where, their parents have invested in their own planning and financial security, and it's fair to say that they've valued the outcomes that have been made, along the journey. So for me to play a part in bringing that succession piece to children and establishing the right foundations from their own financial position has been really important. So yes, in terms of investing for children, there are specific, investments that you can make, but investing in a person or investing in advice is actually another avenue where you can derive significant value and sort of set up a really sensible and wise path for the future. So for me, that's been something that I've really enjoyed, but I think our clients have also seen the value of that advice as well.
Yeah. No, thank you for that, Kristen. It's a very important topic. We've been in business. Arrow's been around for nearly 40 years, and as a consequence, we're dealing often with 3 or 4 generations of the one family. And we know that over the next 20 years, there's going to be an enormous transfer of wealth from one generation to another. And so this conversation is very timely and very important. I hope you find it of interest or found it of interest. Certainly would be very interested in any feedback or any comments from you. And thank you again for the opportunity to speak to you this morning.